In mission together we all join our hands. In mission together throughout many lands. With our hearts united, our voices we raise. To God our Creator in glorious praise.
Hi, you're watching Reflections. Reflections is a TV show that is hosted by Paducah Cooperative Ministry. Paducah Cooperative Ministry is a local help agency here in Paducah that tries to be there when folks have a little bit of difficulty in their lives. Their motto is doing God's work with human hands. I'm Jay Gottman. I'm the minister at First Christian Church here in Paducah, and today our TV program is going to focus on what it's like to live on the river and to work in the barge industry. And our special guest is Kempton D Baldridge, who is the chaplain of the Ohio River region for Seamen's Church Institute. And so we want to welcome you, Kempton, and we want to hear about the fascinating ministry that you do, and more specifically want to hear about what it's like for someone to work and to live and to be a part of the barge industry. So welcome.
Well, thank you, Jay. And I know that your church, of course, has been part of that network of river-friendly churches for a number of years. And we're very grateful for that. And as churches that take an interest in our very mobile, peripatetic population of towboaters, we're very grateful for the support that you and your folks, and particularly the children at First Christian Church have shown. I know that several of our towboaters took absolute delight in the artwork. Hallmark makes fine Christmas cards, but they're no finer than the Sunday school children at First Christian Church, that's for sure. And I think you've probably heard about young Olivia from your parish,
Yes.
whose Christmas card became the sample for the ideal Christmas card to the River Mariners. And it had Olivia's name on it, and it had a big heart, and it just said love. And I thought, now here is an all-occasion card, good for Easter, good for Christmas, good for what ails you out on the river. But anyway, thank you very much, Jay, for being a part of the River-Friendly Church Network. And for encouraging your people to show an interest in our folks who may not ever make it to the Sunday services or hear any of your wonderful sermons, but they're very much impacted by the work that you do and the dozens and dozens of other churches up and down the Ohio and Mississippi rivers.
Sure, and I think that's one of the beautiful things about being in ministry, and many of the local congregations here in Paducah and around McCracken County have experienced this. Those who work on the river really may not have the opportunity to be in worship because of their work schedules.
Exactly.
And yet, local congregations and even the temple here in town can be involved and provide and nurture and pray for and be supportive of these men and women who work long hours and sometimes dangerous hours in very difficult conditions, that we can be supportive of them in many different ways. And today I'm excited because I think it's fascinating just to hear from your perspective as a chaplain, but what it's like in the average day or the average month for someone who works on the river, what they go through, what they experience, some of their challenges,
Right.
and some of their needs, and how they experience the world in which they live based on their schedule.
Right. Well, the one thing that I would say about ministry on the river is that it has elements of being an industrial chaplaincy, and by industrial I mean that I get to be with people where they work in the workplace. and to see not only their working conditions, but also to experience some of the hardships and frustrations, as well as the joys of that setting. But the big difference, of course, is that they don't punch a time clock, and at the end of their shift, they don't get to go home. And so, in a very real way, the industrial chaplaincy model only goes so far. The military chaplaincy model, of course, it bears some relevance, except that in general, people aren't shooting at us out on the river too much. Although this is Kentucky, and so you never know. But the separation from family and friends, and actually from what is familiar, it can take its toll. They do have to be working around the clock. At any given morning, at 5:30 in the morning, every morning, when some of us might be getting up to let the dog out, they've already had a watch change. In fact, at 5:30 each day out on the river, if you go down there, you might find someone in the emergency room at the hospitals, and in fact, I'm sure you will. I'm sure you'll find our fantastic Paducah police on duty and our fire department on duty. But if you go down to the river, you'll also see our towboaters on duty, on watch, safely navigating the rivers to make sure that we have grains for our breakfast foods, and that we have concrete for our roads, and that we have coal for our electrical plants, and oil for our automobiles, and on and on and on. 70% of all the goods and commodities of our nation's economy are carried on the rivers by barge. And well, it is. I mean, we already know how overcrowded our highways are, and certainly the railroads are at near capacity anyway. And so, pound for pound, person for person, the River Mariner probably does more to maintain the stability of our economy and our American way of life than maybe 10 or 15 of the next the next workers or employees. In fact, some companies don't even refer to their people as employees; they call them associates. And certainly, they are a breed apart. You go on a towboat, and you realize that it is very much a family of sorts, or a mini tribe. You may not like the person with whom you share a stateroom, but at the same time, you know that person would walk through fire, literally, to save your sorry carcass. And you do the same for them.
Sure.
And by definition, biblical definition, that's a loved one.
Sure. Well, and you talk about them being a family on that boat. About how many people are typically on a boat, and what are the living conditions like? You mentioned a stateroom, and then I guess the next big question is, how many people does it take to operate a barge? Because in scale, we're talking huge vessels.
Right. Well, yeah. When you put a tow together on the Ohio River, we're limited by the size of the chambers in the locks, and so we're limited to 1,200 feet of barge and towboat, barges and towboats. Now, 1,200 feet. That's more acreage than a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. Imagine the aircraft carrier Nimitz on Paducah waterfront, and that's what you're looking at in a typical barge. The aircraft carrier Nimitz is 1,092 feet. A typical barge on the Ohio River, 15 barges with a long line towboat, line haul towboat, is roughly 1,200 feet. And with the gross tonnage of what a World War II heavy cruiser, 28,000 tons. And when you imagine, now the crew of an aircraft carrier is around 6,000 people. crew of a towboat on the Ohio River would be 10, although 5 of them are going to be asleep at any given point.
My goodness.
So you're looking at 4 or 5 people operating a Nimitz aircraft, an aircraft carrier-sized tow, sometimes within 50 yards of the river, and while passing other similar-sized vessels, and doing so day in, day out, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, with a remarkable, in fact, an exceptional safety record. Safety now granted, you might imagine, well, they're only traveling 6 or 7 miles per hour. You can get into a lot of trouble at 6 or 7 miles per hour, believe me, and as any towboater will tell you. But the commitment to safe passage, safe navigation, doing no harm to each other, but also to the environment. I think if the majority of Americans could see how magnificently the towboats are operated with an eye towards not only getting the goods to where they need to go or to market, and of course they play a huge role in terms of the American exports, but also the respect that they show for each other, for the river, for the environment, for pleasure boaters. My gosh, most of the white hair that you see on some of the towboat pilots has come from some reckless person in a speedboat trying to play chicken with their tow. There is nothing that is more frustrating and perhaps more damaging to the psyche than incidents that occur with pleasure boaters who have no idea that, for example, it takes a mile for them to stop a tow, even a full backing down. But when you see the sorts of stresses and all the different factors that are at work with these river professionals, you can't come away with anything but admiration. You just sort of shake your head and say, "Wow, I've got a college education, but I couldn't do that." That's an amazing amount of skill. Everybody's the different sets of skills, but the same level of dedication and professionalism that you would expect in the cockpit of an airliner. And I can't say enough about these guys. They're fantastic.
Right. I know there's a lot of training. I know that the state-of-the-art facility located in downtown Paducah.
Right, at Siemens Church. Right.
At Siemens Church is amazing. There is a mock-up simulator to help towboat captains.
Well, actually 4. We have 4 interactive pilot houses there that provide real-time simulations, and these are for experienced pilots and masters. What's sort of funny is that you would guess, because of the computer games that you might have at home, that well, this isn't like the real thing. Well, perhaps, but we've at Siemens Church we've done everything we could to provide the verisimilitude to the experience on the river, such that even the most skeptical towboater going in there saying, "Oh, I don't know what you can teach me here," will come out and you'll see the sweat coming down their brow, and Captain Buddy Kempton, who's one of our very experienced captains and instructors, says, I know that we're beginning to get to them when I see them kick the chair out and stand up. Which is delightful. In other words, they put them through their paces. They present them with very real scenarios. Ones that if they've spent a few years out on the river, they know these things can happen, and it causes them to run through the stream of logic, so that in other words, we create mayhem. We create their worst day on the river there in the simulation, so that when things do go south, when things when they're having a bad day at the office, as we might say, they know they're trained to respond with a method that is likely to yield the best results in a bad situation.
Mm-hmm.
And they know what to do, and they know to trust their training. And I've actually seen this on the river myself. I was involved in an incident a few months back where within a few hours of a fatal mishap on the river that was weather related, I was with the crew. And to hear them talk, I began to realize that their training, every one of them had been, every one of the senior navigation staff had been through the training at Seamen's Church. And I had just debriefed, or had been part of a debriefing at Seamen's Church that a few days before, and it was as if I was hearing the very same things there in this real world situation as I had heard the previous week in our simulation. And they had the confidence of knowing that they had done everything that was right and appropriate and in good order. Mm-hmm. And they had the satisfaction of knowing that they did not make a bad situation worse. In fact, they did everything that the training had, that experience had shown would be the proper response to keep a handle on the situation and to produce the best outcome. And I was so proud for my colleagues at Seamen's Church, and I let them know that, hey, you may not have been to this place in the Tennessee River, but you were there. Your
Sure.
training was. And I hope that gave them some sense of satisfaction.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, to be trained, to know that you did everything that you could.
Exactly.
And I know even today you brought some of the implements of the trade
Right.
with you. I assume
Right.
that some of these are standard safety features.
Well,
and
this is one right here is my TWIC card, which is not something that most people have, but this came as a result of 9/11. That in the aftermath of this, it's the Transportation Workers Identification Certification, and in this not only has my picture, but it's required. That anyone who is actually working on the river or intends to visit any commercial boats or commercial vessels that are working on the river, before they can even set foot inside the skin of the vessel, they have to produce this identification. And it reflects an awareness that from a Homeland Security standpoint, this is where our merchant marine is. The 3/4 of the United States merchant marine, and certainly the lion's share of the tonnage, is here on the brown water. And although we may not imagine the international component or the Homeland Security aspects of it, if somebody wanted to do mischief, they certainly could do some. They could certainly do so using our rivers, and so the Coast Guard and via Homeland Security has implemented this program. And so wherever I go on the rivers, if I'm on the docks, if I'm stepping aboard a vessel, I have to carry this with me. This also gives me the right to escort you, Jay, and so I'd like to extend the invitation to take you out with me. And so if I've got one of these, you can come on and I'm your escort. So
that's
I'd
wonderful.
Love to get you
Yeah.
out on a towboat sometime.
Definitely.
The other thing that the well-dressed chaplain is wearing is this work vest. Now the work vest, of course, it doesn't go with anything I have, but it actually goes with everything I have nowadays. The work vest, of course, is required for anybody who's going to be out on the river. And one of the things that if I'm inside the skin of the vessel, I don't need to wear that, but to do the transfer. And it's actually a helpful reminder to me that each year, despite all of the safety precautions and the training and the best efforts of the more than 50 barge companies operating along the 2,200 miles of inland rivers, accidents happen. Mm-hmm. And sadly, one of the things that, again, one of the greatest dangers on the river, as you would guess, is drowning. Mm-hmm. And for someone to fall off a tow, given the currents, given the nature of the water. I mean, the water may not seem very deep. In fact, in some cases, you might know that it's only 6, 7, 8 feet down, but that's enough to drown you. And sadly, each year we lose people to drowning, and so we do everything that we can in the industry, in the maritime industry, to promote safety. And even these work vests, of course, aren't these are not intended to impede the work that needs to go on the barge, but they're not ideal. I certainly wouldn't suggest going offshore in it, but it's again, it's a reminder to as Elmer Fudd used to say, be careful.
Well, and if you're working with only 4 other people, if there are 5 on a crew,
exactly.
How do those on the boat keep track of where people are? So if somebody does fall off.
Well, that's the other prop I didn't bring today, but we actually all have VHF radio, and in fact at all times, when you consider that you're a quarter of a mile away from the pilot house in some instances, or nearly. You want to, and on a dark night, foggy night, snowy night, the man in the pilot house, whether it be the pilot or the captain, he may not be able to see you if you're at the head of the tow, and so there is constant communication, and they try to make sure that they know where everyone is. And also what sorts of factors, because are going to be influencing the safe navigation of the towboat. For example, in situations of fog, even though it costs money for them to stop or to push up into the bank, and certainly there's no reward for getting your tow in last. You know, I mean, you certainly want to get things downriver, but compromising safety is not optional. And so very often on a very foggy morning when the visibility is restricted, they will say, we can't see, and that's why the communication, as you say, spread across a quarter mile, and several. I think it's 3 acres worth of barge. You want to know where your deckhands are, and where your mate is, etc. And so that's why the technology has been useful in helping to promote safety. And that's one of the reasons why they train and train and train. We of course have the firefighting training that we do as well. I went through that myself in July, and nothing. I mean, I might have a short attention span, but 1 million BTUs of fire. My attention was. I was focused. So, some of the firefighters from the Paducah Fire Department serve as trainers for Seamen's Church, and we do marine firefighting training down there, and it helps to remind you that there is never any justification for compromising safety.
So what's a typical work cycle for those who work on the river?
Well, for the majority of the line haul boats, the ones that might be going from Paducah to Gallatin, Tennessee, for example, or Paducah to Pittsburgh, or Paducah down to New Orleans, they're going a long way, and those boats usually in the 5,000 to 10,000 or even or larger horsepower range. They're going to be working 28 days on, usually, and 28 days off. That's the typical rotation, which means that they're gone for 6 months a year and they're home for 6 months a year, but not at one shot.
Sure.
Now, some of that is as a result of the Jones Act, which is very detailed in the amount of work that members of the Merchant Marine can do. And it also helps to assure that there is a trained force of merchant mariners available to the country, which is obviously a good thing. A number of people, because of the economy or because of their personal situations, even when they're home, you might hear of them working over or taking additional work in order to bolster their income, or maybe because they're trying to upgrade their licenses. But
yeah.
Yeah.
So with them being gone basically 6 months a year, being home 6 months a year, not all at the same time, but if you were to share with those watching today, what's the biggest challenge to families and to the individuals with that kind of lifestyle that revolves around their work? What impacts them the most, and what are some of the challenges that you face as a chaplain to help them with that kind of work cycle?
Right. Well, that's, I learned very early on that maintaining some semblance of family life, that the things that most husbands and fathers would take for granted are sometimes only a wish or an aspiration or a dream for a towboater. I met a towboater within the first few weeks of arriving, and he told me the story about when with his daughter and his ex, the family was going to be breaking up, and he asked, and he said, "Sweetheart, I have some bad news. Your mom and I are splitting up." And she said, "Well, what do you mean?" And he said, "Well, it means I'm not going to live here anymore. Daddy's not going to live here anymore." And the child started laughing, and he thought, what I said wasn't funny. And she said, "Oh, Daddy, you're joking. You don't live here. You live on the boat."
Oh, wow.
And it's
Sure.
And he told me that story 7 years on, to say I resolved right then and there that if that was the perception she had, and this was the life I was living, that I may not know how to be, I may not have done it in the past, but I'm going to be the best father I knew how to be. And I should tell you that I met his daughter and his subsequent daughter by the second marriage, and boy, they clung to their daddy like grapes. And he, this captain is on the Lower Mississippi. Really has become a model of vibrant fatherhood, despite the fact that he lives on the boat, according to his daughters. But he might live on the boat, but his daughters know that he loves them dearly, and that and there isn't anything that he wouldn't do with or for them. And so that is going to be the challenge. And of course, I knew that myself, having served in the Coast Guard and then the Navy, that time away doesn't have to be wasted time, but it does present its own sets of difficulties.
Sure. So part of your position is helping them to make the most of their time home and being with their families and experiencing those type of things. And we're running out of time.
Sorry.
We could talk for hours about this, and what you do is fascinating. And I'm so thankful that Kempton was able to be with us today. As I mentioned, he is a chaplain for the Ohio River region, and we're thankful for you watching Reflections today. It is an outreach ministry of Paducah Cooperative Ministry. If you want to know more about us, you can always check it out at paducahcoopministry.org, and you can watch these great programs on Paducah Channel 2 at any time. Thank you, and continue your prayers and contributions to Paducah Cooperative Ministry so shows like this can continue.
In mission.